What's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back into another edition of PTN Extra. I'm Evan Kamiko. As always, joined alongside Mike Irwin for the entirety of the football season. Mike, it's been a lot of fun. We've got about 2 weeks, a week and a half left until football officially ends this fall season in the Liberty Bowl, the 2024 AutoZone Liberty Bowl between Arkansas and Texas Tech. Let's talk about it. It's a game we haven't talked much yet about, and the closer we get, the more relevant it seems, as this is really the last PTN Extra before the bowl game, because next week everyone will be on vacation, and we'll be on our way to Memphis, Tennessee for that game. So let's talk about this. Interesting enough, over the weekend, Baron Morton, Texas Tech starting quarterback, is ruled out with shoulder surgery, so he won't be playing. What's your overall thought on this matchup?
Well, it just changes so fast. I think on our Pig Trail show on Sunday, I was saying, well, at least the running game is pretty good because you got Braylon Russell and you got Rashad DeBinion. Then DeBinion, I guess, had to have surgery, and then he transferred. And, Braylon Russell's gone. So, boom, suddenly the running game is like, do we have a running game? I think Arkansas will mostly throw it in this game because you do have Taylon Green. You do have enough receivers, I think, that the passing game will still work. And if you have, Arkansas has lost 11 starters for this bowl game, but only 4 on defense. And defense is really where I think this is going to be won. If you can stop Texas Tech, they've got the backup quarterback. Now, you may be thinking, wow, at least Arkansas got a break there. And maybe, we don't know. But like I continue to say, I have a lot of friends that I grew up with out there that are in Lubbock, Texas Tech fans. They all tell me that their backup quarterback, although he didn't play a lot, when he did, he played really well. So they don't think there'll be a big drop-off. We'll see. When you know you're going to be the starter, it's different when you get called in all of a sudden. So he will have time to absorb thinking, I'm going to be the starter in a bowl game, and we'll see if Arkansas can take advantage of him. But it is a mystery game. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. We know that 2 years ago, Arkansas was missing 9 starters and still managed to go and beat Kansas, and it was an impressive game, and everybody was excited because all the young players were getting their chance. And that's really what they've talked about here. We got a lot of guys, the guys that are out there working out with some of these new starters are saying, hey, they've got energy. When you play a whole year, you get beat up and you're kind of tired. But now you got these younger guys that are all energized, and he says a lot of the guys, veteran guys are saying, hey, it's been fun out there with them because they brought a lot of energy to practice. What does that translate to in a game? Who knows?
Yeah, and we heard Taylon Green yesterday when he spoke to the media say that the team looks different, and quite honestly, it does. He's glad that Tesla is also there because Tesla is, when we talk about the wide receivers, is really the main pass catcher that's coming back. And what I'm really curious about, and you touched on it a little bit, is some of the younger guys that we don't get to see. I'm really curious. Again, we talked about it on the Pig Trail show. The last time we saw C.J. Brown was fumbling a catch and run 14 yards that ultimately costed the Hogs the game. So I'm curious to see C.J. Brown. How is he going to look? Because Arkansas views him as a cornerstone in that wide receiver room. Right. Shamar Easter, another example of those guys. Monty Harrison, a 29-year-old former MLB player, will finally get some reps on the outside. We'll see how he's able to do. And then you look at that running back room, and I believe it's 8% of the Hogs' total production is going to be playing in that game. Like you said, no Jaquindon Jackson, no Braylon Russell, now no Rashad DeBinion. It leaves the Hogs in more of a passing offense, and without some of these offensive line pieces that you have, and now you're going into the second and third guy, you're now going to face some hardship with the pass rush potentially and struggling to be able to protect Taylon.
Rodney Hill has been impressive at times. He's quick. He can find a hole. He can squirt through a hole and get you 10 or 12 yards. He's not Jaquindon Jackson. But we'll see how he does, and there may be some guys that we don't know about that will do something in that game. But I do tend to think that they'll try to take advantage of their passing game in that game.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the Hogs' defense, something that kind of was told to us in the beginning of the season, and we laughed at it a little bit, was the Arkansas linebacker depth. They felt that was the best in the team, and we sat there going, well, we don't know anything about these guys. You had Steven Dixon and Xavier Sori transfer from Tennessee. Transfer from Georgia. I'm thinking Danico Slaughter came from Tennessee. But you had these guys, and we're like, what's it going to look like? What's it not? And now, as the team is really starting to take shape, and now you're getting into the last guys who are going to leave, and most of the guys now are going to stay, unless they're NFL draft and going in that direction. And now you see that a lot of it looks like the investment that Arkansas made is in that linebacking group because of how solid it was in 2024 for 2025 to keep those guys and make that financial decision. That's best for Arkansas in the portal.
Yeah, Dix wasn't a full-time starter, but he started more games than he didn't. and then Sorey was the starter all year long. So those two guys basically say, first of all, we love playing with each other. This is going to be a chance for us to play together once again, and then we'll project again to next year. And Dick said, I think we'll be the best duo in the country. So we'll see if that happens. But they're both excited about. And look, they can help in a lot of ways. They can help the D-line, which has lost a couple of starters, help them with run stop. They can help with the blitz pressure. And they can also help with short and intermediate pass coverage.
And they'll also help, too, with getting Tavian Wallace up to speed, 4- or 5-star guy out of Georgia who's supposed to be a really big piece for this Arkansas defense, really highly touted recruit that Travis Williams and company were able to land. And I love kind of the Dixon and Sorey were going back and forth earlier today in the media, and Dix was giving his name for Sorey, which was Sly, which I think is really cool, kind of Dixon and Sly right there, of a little nice tandem there. And the back, but the question's going to be, what's Arkansas secondary going to look like? And you could say the same thing for the pass rush, where now, who knows if June Koch is going to be able to play. You're not going to have Landon, Nico Davier in the portal. So it feels like the center of this Arkansas defense is solid, but the front and the back end are question marks.
Well, remember what happened to the Ole Miss game. Mm-hmm. Arkansas came out after an open date and started an entirely new bunch of guys in the secondary, and they played well. So that may have been a good thing when it happened, giving those guys a chance, because now you're going to see them be the starters in the secondary.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting to watch what's going to happen, and we'll have fun. We'll be out there at least in Memphis for all the coverage. We'll bring you next week after the holidays. But, Mike, let's shift gears, but we'll stay in football. Let's talk about the greater landscape. The college football playoff is coming up, but more importantly, you have the transfer portal. And I was listening to Pat McAfee today talk to Curt Cignetti, the Indiana football coach, and one of the things he brought up was, I'm trying to get ready for a college football playoff game right now, and there's all these guys dealing with the portal, and he's like, if we don't get guys in here by January 5th-ish, 75% of them are going to find a home. And that really hurts all these teams now prepping for a bowl and trying, especially you look at an Indiana, Notre Dame, Penn State, who lost their backup quarterback. Rumor is Missouri's one of his finalists. Bo Pribula could be going to Mizzou. But what does this say in your eyes about the greater landscape of college football when it comes to the transfer portal and guys being able to stay and leave?
Well, Razorback fans, and some of them have already done this, but all of them need to pay attention, because what's happening here isn't just happening here. It's happening everywhere. And the numbers have gone up. Arkansas got hit early and hard, but then the numbers have tapered off a little bit. But some of these schools are now getting up there with 18, 19, 20 guys out and hit the portal. And it's even affecting teams like Alabama. I mean, their head coach is angry right now. And he went on a tirade basically saying, we're not going to put up with this. And I think what he was really trying to do was he was telling their fans, you got to give us more money because we're losing guys. Yeah. They're offering some of our players $1 million, and we got to figure out a way to keep them. But if it's affecting Alabama, it's affecting everybody. I've said before, I think there's relief on the way. I think what's going on with a lot of these agents is with revenue sharing coming, the word is that NILs will be reduced. If it happens, they're not going to be making as much money. So maybe some of them realize next year they may not even be agents. This is their last chance to clean up because they get a portion of this.
Right.
And it may be that agents will get to be a part of the negotiations for revenue sharing too. I'm not sure. But if they are, it won't be the kind of money that we're talking about now. You may be negotiating with a kid to get $30,000, instead of $150,000. So that's less for them. So that's why this is happening. And I think everyone would welcome that. If you're a college football fan, you want to see this kind of go back to some sort of normal situation where maybe a guy has to come in, and if you pay him money to play from the athletic department budget, he has to sign a 2-year contract. Mm-hmm. Can't just be jumping every year.
Yeah, because a lot of that is, one, it's loyalty, right? Like, you can say, I'm loyal to this program. I wear Arkansas Razorbacks proudly on my chest, and then you're gone in 3, 4, 5 months. So what does that really mean at the end of the day? But I think this is a bigger problem that we've seen kind of all of the stuff go on at the federal level and all of these court cases that are going up, that there needs to be federal regulation in that. What is that? I'm not the person you ask. I'm just up here talking with Mike about all of this. But I think at the end of the day, there needs to be something. I think the salary cap, kind of what we've been hearing, $20 million is a step in the right direction for all of these schools. But at the end of the day, I think the bigger issue that people aren't forgetting, and that you brought up right there, is that the agents are agents, right? Like some of them, and I know when I was at school and really when NIL was starting as a junior in college, like I saw around friends of mine were trying to DM athletes and make deals with these guys to get profit off of them and say, hey, I'll be your agent, I'll help you out, get NIL deals and whatnot. But the reality is that was the issue from the get-go, right?
Exactly.
Like, there should have never been students who are on campus that are saying to these guys, I'll be your agent. Because they don't know any of the negotiations, any of the federal stuff, all of these deals. And now here we are 3-4 years later. And, some of these kids who are still agents are getting these guys millions and millions of dollars, in a sense corrupting the game of college football. So I think when you look at the transfer portal and the blame of it, I think a lot of it has to do with the NCAA, but also these opportune college students who see athletes and are able to make money off of them and get greedy and try to do that. And without regulation and without guidelines, they've allowed this to happen and this to go much further than, a couple students trying to, build a marketing brand and go from there and make NIL money.
The way this was originally intended, because if you'll remember, if you go back before all this, if they found out you had an agent, you're eligible. You were ineligible, and the school got punished because the agent would be an NFL agent. He'd be somebody directing you to kind of shopping you around for the draft, which is and even that was when NIL got started. That was still against the rules. The NCAA never intended these NIL agents to be agents for you as a player, getting you more money somewhere else, putting you in a position where you get drafted higher. They were just supposed to get you NIL deals at your school after you got on campus. Well, Tennessee, 2 or 3 other schools filed lawsuits, said that's wrong. They can do whatever they want. That stuff, that legally has not been decided. It's still in the courts. But I think all of that will be addressed, and it will go away. And again, at that point, an NIL agent may be an agent within your school to help you. Again, you get revenue sharing. Okay, how do I go talk to these coaches and they're only going to give me $30,000. I think I'm worth $40,000. How do I get that extra 10? I don't know if the athlete's going to do that himself or if he's going to send his agent in.
Yeah.
And then supposedly we're going to see a lot of these schools go to a GM type person that will handle all this. So is that what it's going to be? Agent comes in and talks to the GM and they go back and forth like you're trying to buy a car at a dealership? I don't know. But I just know that something's got to change because the way it is right now, when you're a team in the playoffs, and some of these coaches are in playoff teams, Rhett Lashley, some of these guys are complaining about how hard it is to try to get ready for the college playoffs, maybe hopefully to win a national championship. And you got all this like mosquitoes buzzing around your head.
Yeah, the background noise. And again, people say ignore the outside noise, ignore the outside noise. How can you ignore the outside noise for some of these programs who are going for the championship when it's happening in your house, right? Like,
Exactly.
It's like, well, I want to ignore what's going on in my house. And you look at these playoff teams, and we're talking maybe 3 to 5 guys on these teams right now who are in the playoffs are going to the transfer portal. But that's still 3 to 5 guys you have to spend extra effort on top of the recruitment of getting guys in because of how many of them are going to have homes by January 15th when the national championship, because it's now the 12-team playoff, still wouldn't even be played this year. I don't think it's till the 21st or the 19th. So you have all this extra time, and the reality is it needs to get fixed. Are we going to do anything sitting here talking about it? Unfortunately not. We're going to sit and wait and see like everybody at home, but at least it's a start of having the conversation and trying to figure out what's the right way to go at it, I think. So we'll see what happens. Anything else on football before we talk some basketball?
Well, it should cool off for the playoff teams toward the end of the month because I think it's the 29th, something like that, the portal closes. So if you're going to make a deal, you have to make it by then. What's going to be interesting, again, if you're on a playoff team, what if you have to hit the portal? Are they going to let you play in that bowl? And then, because they know you're going to leave, how's that going to work? I don't know.
And Mike, because this is our show and we can do whatever we want here, let's talk playoffs. Let's make predictions for these games. Why not? Let's have some fun. First game, Clemson, Texas. Who you got?
I'll go with Texas just because it's at home and all that stuff.
Does that hurt for you to take
Texas? I don't like to admit it, but I mean they could get upset. I mean I've said all along, and this is not any great thinking on my part. Their schedule has been weak this year, so maybe they don't win it, but if I had to put money on it, I would go with Texas.
Yeah, I think Texas is the betting favorite. Interesting enough, I was reading some of the guys down in Austin, and what they were saying is they're a little nervous that they're not going to fill that 105,000-seat stadium. They were nervous because the students might not show up because it is at the after finals and all that. So I thought that was really interesting, but I agree. I think Texas is too good. You had Clemson sneak their way in, but Texas plays down to their opponents. We've seen that all season. They played down at Vanderbilt. Hate to say it, they played a little bit down when they were here against Arkansas, and that's just the reality of the Longhorns. Now, we've seen them step up, and even A&M, they played a little down to A&M. If you're saying A&M was a 3-loss team, Texas, or the 2-loss team at the time, Texas was undefeated, or the 1-loss team because the Georgia lost, but we've seen Texas play down. I think it's a closer game than people think. I like the Longhorns too. The next game we'll talk about has to be Ohio State, Tennessee. Who do you got?
I think Tennessee is vulnerable because we've seen them at times vulnerable. Who beat them? We did. Arkansas did. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that doesn't look bad on their record right now? What the heck happened in that game? And Arkansas beat them largely with a backup quarterback. I've just felt like all along Tennessee, when they're clicking, they're really good. But if they're not clicking, they're beatable. I'm going to go with Ohio State.
I like Ohio State at home. I think Ohio State fans don't like Ohio State at home, but many of them are going to go for it anyway.
Yeah, and then they want to run their coach off, who's got an incredible record.
Exactly. And Ryan Day, because he can't beat Michigan, so it's fun watching Big Ten football. It's a lot of fun, but it's not fun when you have to deal with all of that. That's the second game. There's another game Saturday we'll come back to, but let's talk about the Friday game. That's my game. Indiana, Notre Dame. We've talked about this in the office. Tell everyone at home.
I'm biased because I hate Notre Dame. I've always hated Notre Dame. I don't like those guys. And plus, I have all kinds of cousins in Indiana. My dad was from Indiana, and I have cousins that went to Indiana. And I've been there. I've been on their campus. I mean, I'm going to go with Indiana in this thing and just say, hey, okay, if you think it's an upset, fine. But Notre Dame is Notre Dame. They're a bunch of doofuses.
Yeah. The other game, I got to go with my Hoosiers. Can't question them. I will say that should be a good one. The other game that we'll talk about is the one game that I keep forgetting. It has to be, on the bracket, right? You got Penn State is there. So it's Penn State, SMU. That's what I was forgetting on. Can't forget that. Who do you got there?
Yeah, I think SMU is a team that played in the ACC. They're like Texas. I don't think they played a very tough schedule. And then when they did finally play Clemson, they got beat.
Yeah.
And they should have won that game. And I just think they're vulnerable. So Penn State will win that game.
I kind of like SMU there. I like the underdog. And they talk about the weather and it's cold. I'm not a big Drew Aller fan. I think that he has his problems, and we've seen that. And look, people want to say about that Big Ten championship game against Oregon, well, they only lost by 7. Yeah, but they were down 14 most of the game and came back. I think that weather will be a factor. I don't think SMU's seen an atmosphere.
How cold is it going to be? How cold?
It's going to be like the 30s, I think.
SMU, a bunch of weenies. They're from Dallas.
Brett Lashley was saying that they practiced in that the other week.
Well, if he took them somewhere to Canada and had them work out, that might help.
Potentially. I like SMU. I like the Ponies. Give me the Ponies. I'll take that. Those are the games this weekend. We had fun picking those. Let's finish with some basketball talk. A lot going on in SEC country, especially with the fact that when you look at it, maybe 5-10 years ago, the SEC nowhere near as strong as it is today. 10 years ago, maybe they got 4 or 5 teams in the playoff in the postseason tournament. Now they're projected to get 13 teams from Joe Lunardi. What does this say about the SEC right now when it comes to basketball?
Well, you have to look at what they're doing. Now, I've watched basketball since the season started, and I've got ESPN3, so I watch everything. If it's on regular TV, if I see it, if it's just on ESPN3, I see it. I've seen all these teams at one time or another, and they just keep winning. They keep winning in difficult situations where you think they're going to lose. They go on the road and win at places like Chapel Hill. I mean, they win at these places. Even though it may look, they're up big and then all of a sudden they're down 3 or 4 late in the game, but they always come back and figure out a way to win. So Florida did that the other night. Tennessee, Florida. Oklahoma's good. I saw South Carolina come back and win a game. I thought they were going to lose that game, and they have 3 losses. The thing to look at, there's only one Power 4 conference that's above 500 against the other conferences. Just one. The SEC is up just under 80%. Mm-hmm. So the best any other conference has done is right at 50%. They're up at 80.
Yeah.
Right at 80%. That's an incredible number because that includes every team in your conference. Joe Lunardi said the other day he's never seen a year in which one conference dominated everybody else like this. Everybody else. And it's just, I hope it looks good right now, but when the conference race starts, who's going to win on the road? Yeah. Tell me who's going to go on the road and beat any of these teams. I mean, you could have a conference champion, a Tennessee or an Auburn or an Alabama or somebody like that. You could have them win the SEC with 7 or 8 losses, conference losses.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing right now. And we look at the preseason projections. Your bottom 3 teams are what? LSU, Oklahoma, and Missouri. Well, Oklahoma is one of the best top 15 teams in the country right now, and Porter Moser's done a fantastic job this year. Look, they were good last year. When Arkansas played them, we went to the game in Tulsa, and they beat Arkansas. Musk got kicked out that game. It was very funny watching all of that happen. But you're sitting there going, Oklahoma could make a run. They were top 25 then, completely fell off a shelf, and didn't end up making the NCAA tournament. But they're a team that's now hot. They've refound their footing. Again, Porter Moser, one of the better coaches, I think, in the country. Saw what he did a couple of years ago with Loyola Chicago, making that Final Four run. And then you have Missouri, who's a team that's feisty. Tamar Bates is one of their leading scorers, a former Indiana Hoosier. And they just knocked off Kansas at home. And it's like, to your point, where does it get weak? Maybe LSU now is your gimme game? Maybe.
I mean, where are you going to go on the road and get a win? Because typically what you do is if you can win if you win all but one of your home games, then all you got to do is win 2 or 3 road games and you're going to win the conference. Mm-hmm. But where do you get those 2 or 3 road games? Where do you do that?
Yeah,
I mean,
you're not walking into the jungle. Probably not.
No.
Rupp Arena still hard as always. Same with Knoxville. Really hard to get a win in any of those atmospheres. And to your point, I think it just shows how deep the SEC is today, and it shows, that Arkansas needs to find their footing soon, and I think they have, and we'll talk about that in a second. But when you look at kind of the SEC, you have to be playing ball at the right time. That's how it always is, especially when January 4th rolls around. In the next 2 weeks, Arkansas's got 2 games before Tennessee on January 5th. What do you need to see from the Razorbacks? I was going to say the Hoosiers.
You need to continue to see the bigs play well. I mean, they need to get Big Z back full speed 100%. Because if you have the ability to play Jonas Adu and Big Z or Brazil, any of those combinations, if you can play 2 bigs at one time, that really alleviates the pressure of trying to hit threes every time you turn around. But Arkansas is suddenly turning into a good 3-point shooting team where they weren't before. But guess what? Everybody is. That's one of the things I see when I watch the SEC. Almost everybody's got 3-point shooters. They're hitting 10, 12, 13, 14 threes a game. And you're going, wow. But what a lot of them do is they still have 2 bigs inside too. And the way you can work with 2 bigs, especially if they can work with each other, you toss it into one, people collapse on him, he reaches around, dishes it to the guy on the backside, and he's got a dunk, or you kick it back out and you've hit a 3 because everybody's collapsed on the bigs. It's really amazing to me that all of these SEC teams pretty much look the same. And they look a lot like what I'm seeing from Arkansas right now. If I were describing Arkansas, I would describe them this same way. Maybe not earlier, but now, as their shooting has picked up, and as especially the guy that's made the biggest difference is Jonas Adu. I mean, he's just getting better and better every game, and he's made them a different team.
Yeah, Adu brings a physicality that I think was missing, and this isn't a knock on Trevin Brazil or Big Z, but they're not physically imposing guys when it comes down to the paint. They're tall, lanky, and athletic, and really great if they can play a 4-5 hybrid, run down and shoot from the wing potentially, but they're not guys that are going to be able to sit in the paint and stop and block shots. Now, we saw Trevin Brazil do that in New York. The big reason why Arkansas beat Michigan.
If he's got a fire under him, he will do that.
Absolutely. But that's really what Jonas Adu is on this team for. That's kind of his role. He's not a 3-point shooter. He's a rim protector, defending in the paint, as well as going to get you buckets down low, and has really great vision to find some of the guards, or a Trevin Brazil on the wing. We saw him hit a 3. Big Z hit a 3 against Michigan. So there's a lot of things that this Arkansas team is going to do well, and especially then you play at UCA and you take care of business and handle them like you were supposed to. So I think that's another really promising sign when it comes to this Hogs team.
But there are some injuries they cannot afford. Right. If anything happened to Adu again, if anything happened to Big Z, I think it would, he's got an ankle thing, I think, right now. If he gets over it, fine. But if that's a problem, what if Trevin Brazil he's injury prone? Mm-hmm. John L. Davis, what if he's, suddenly gets hurt again? I mean, he supposedly worked his way out of that wrist injury.
Yeah.
Boogie Flan, what happens if he gets knocked to the floor and gets an ankle injury and you have to miss 3 games with no Boogie Flan? Then what do you do?
And they just beat UCA without Adu Thiro because he was out still sick. They said he'll be back this week, so he's trending the right direction.
You got a little bit of depth, but you get some key injuries and this turns into a different team.
Yeah, Mike, anything else before we go?
Nope, I think that we've covered it.
I think we've covered everything too. That is going to do it for another edition of PTN Extra. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here very soon on PTN Extra.